Have you ever had that sharp, shooting pain that starts in your lower back and just zings down your leg? If you have, you are definitely not alone. So let's dive into this. In this explainer, we're going to take a journey to really understand something called lumbar radiculopathy, starting with that first shocking pain and following the path all the way through diagnosis and, most importantly, recovery. Yeah, it usually starts with a feeling that's just impossible to ignore. And when you look at how doctors describe it, they use words like these: electric, burning, or sharp. It's such a raw description because that's really what it feels like, like a lightning bolt that just stops you cold. So what's the official medical term for this? It's called lumbar radiculopathy. Now that sounds complicated, but let's break it down. Lumbar just means your lower back, and radiculopathy is a fancy way of saying a nerve root is irritated or compressed. The key thing to get here is that this isn't just generic back pain. It's a very specific nerve problem that originates in your back. You've probably heard a much simpler term for it: a pinched nerve. And honestly, that's a perfect analogy. Think about your nerves as little garden hoses, with signals flowing through them all the time. When something pinches that nerve, it's exactly like putting a kink in the hose. The signal flow gets all messed up, and your brain reads that disruption as pain, or maybe numbness, or even weakness. So what's usually doing the pinching? Well, the number one culprit is a herniated disc. A great way to picture this is to think of the discs between your vertebrae as little jelly donuts. If the tough outer part gets a tear, some of that jelly-like center can squeeze out and press right up against a nerve. It's a simple picture, but it perfectly explains what's happening mechanically. So let's start right there with that feeling, that shocking leg pain that really defines this whole experience for so many people. And just how common is this? You might be surprised. It's estimated that somewhere between 3 to 5% of all people will deal with this at some point in their lives. I mean, that's millions and millions of people. So this is a huge deal, affecting people's ability to do, well, just about everything. Okay, so you've got the symptoms. The pain is there. The next step on the journey is figuring out exactly what's causing it. It's time for a diagnosis. And that's a really good question, right? You've got 5 different nerve roots in your lower back. How can a doctor tell which one is the troublemaker? Well, the answer is this really cool mix of old-school detective work and some pretty amazing modern tech. Believe it or not, it doesn't start with some big, fancy machine. The investigation kicks off with a simple, hands-on physical exam. Your doctor is going to test your reflexes, check for any numb spots, and see how strong certain muscles are in your legs. And these basic tests, they provide a ton of clues. And this is where that detective work really shines. You see, each nerve root is hardwired to control a specific muscle movement. So, for example, if a doctor asks you to lift up your big toe and you really struggle with that, well, that points a big flashing arrow directly at the L5 nerve. Or if you have trouble pointing your foot down, kind of like pushing a gas pedal, that's a classic sign of an S1 nerve issue. It's the exact same idea when it comes to sensation. Nerves also control the feeling in very distinct patterns on your skin, and we call these patterns dermatomes. So if the top of your foot is numb, that suggests an L5 issue. If it's the outer edge of your foot, that points to S1. The physical exam literally creates a map of the problem. Now, once the physical exam gives the doctor a strong hunch, the next step is usually to get a picture to confirm it. And when it comes to seeing soft tissues, like nerves and discs, the absolute gold standard is an MRI. It gives this incredibly clear view of what's going on in there. Okay, so let's look at what an MRI can show us. This is a side view of the lower back. If you just follow the bones down, you can see it right there. That big white blob pushing backward, that's our jelly from the donut. It's a herniated disc right at the L5/S1 level. And now, if we take a look at a cross-section from that exact same spot, the picture becomes crystal clear. Wow. This view shows the pinch perfectly. You can see the disc material bulging out and pressing right on that S1 nerve root. The MRI totally confirms what all those clues from the physical exam were telling us. So, the diagnosis is confirmed. We know what the problem is. The next question, obviously, is what are we going to do about it? And the answer might not be what you think. For most people, the path to recovery starts with simple, non-surgical care. And here it is, probably the best piece of news in this whole explainer. The vast, vast majority of these cases get better without surgery. Our bodies have this amazing ability to heal. You just have to give it some time and the right kind of support, and the pain will often go away on its own. So what does that right support look like?
Well, experts have laid out a pretty clear step-by-step roadmap. Right at the beginning, when the pain is at its worst, the focus is on understanding what's happening, staying gently active, and calming down the inflammation. Then, as things get a little better, you start adding in specific exercises for strength and nerve mobility. And finally, you work on getting back to doing everything you want to do. It just makes sense, right?
But what happens if you do all that and weeks go by and you're just not getting the relief you need? Well, that's when the conversation might start to shift towards surgical options. The timing here is really important. No one's jumping to surgery right away. The general guideline is that if you've given conservative care a real honest try, usually for about 4 to 8 weeks, and the symptoms are still debilitating, then it might be time to talk about surgery. It's not the first choice, but it's a critical option to have. There was this massive study that gave us a huge insight. It compared surgery to non-surgical care, and here's what it found. The surgery group tended to feel better, faster. But over the long haul, like 2 years later, both groups had improved a ton. So the big takeaway is this: most people get better. Surgery is often a tool to get you to that better place faster. And for people who do choose surgery, the way it's done has totally changed. The old school method involved a pretty big incision and cutting through a lot of muscle. But today, it's all about minimally invasive surgery. We're talking tiny incisions, way less disruption to the muscles, and a much, much faster recovery. It's really been a game changer. All right, as we start to wrap this up, there are 2 final, absolutely critical things to cover. First, how to know if you're in a real emergency, and second, how you can take charge of your own recovery. Okay, please, let's pause and pay close attention here because this is so important. While most of these cases are not emergencies, there are a few red flag signs that mean you need to get medical help right away. I'm talking about numbness in the groin area, any loss of bowel or bladder control, or a sudden and worsening weakness in your legs. If you experience any of these, this is not a wait-and-see situation. This is a true medical emergency. So, we've gone on quite the journey, haven't we? From that first electric shock of pain through all the detective work of diagnosis and exploring all the different options for treatment. Just knowing this stuff is powerful, but the real question, the one that matters most, is personal. Now that you have this knowledge, you're empowered. So how are you going to partner with your doctors and therapists to navigate your own unique path back to health?